Chapters 22 and 23 of The Rejuvenation of Aunt Mary by Ann Warner. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 22, Granite. Joshua was dispatched to drive through mud and rain to bring Aunt Mary's solace from the station. Aunt Mary had herself propped up in bed to be ready for the return before Billy's feet had ceased to cry splash on the road outside of the gate. Her eagerness tinged her pallor pink. It was as if the prospect of seeing Janice gave her some of that flood of vitality which always seems to ebb and flow so richly in the life of a metropolis.
"My gracious heavens, Lucinda!"
For Lucinda was back now. She said joyfully,
"To think that I needn't look at you for a week if I don't want to. You haven't any idea how tired I am of looking at you, Lucinda. If you looked like anything, it would be different. But you don't."
Lucinda rocked placidly. Hers was what is called an even disposition. If it hadn't been, she might have led an entirely different life. In fact, she would most certainly have lived somewhere else, for she couldn't possibly have lived with Aunt Mary. The hour that ensued after Joshua's departure was so long that it resulted in a nap for the invalid, and Lucinda had to wake her by slamming the closet door when the arrival turned in at the gate.
"Has he got her?"
Aunt Mary cried breathlessly.
"Has he got someone with him? Run, Lucinda, and bring her in. She needn't wipe her feet, tell her. You can brush the hall afterwards. Well, why ain't you hurrying?"
Lucinda was hurrying, her curiosity being as potent as the commands of her mistress, and 5 seconds later Janice appeared in the door with her predecessor just behind her, a striking contrast.
"You dear blessed Granite!"
cried the old lady, stretching out her hands in a sort of ecstasy.
"Oh my, but I'm glad to see you. Come right straight here. No, shut the door first. Lucinda, you go and do most anything. And how is the city?"
Janice came to the bedside and dropped on her knees there, taking Aunt Mary's withered hand close in both of her own.
"You didn't shut the door,"
the old lady whispered hoarsely.
"I wish you would, and bolt it too, and then come straight back to me."
Janice closed and bolted the door and returned to the bedside. Aunt Mary drew her down close to her, and her voice and eyes were hungry indeed. For a little she looked eagerly upon what she had so craved to possess again, and then she suddenly asked,
"Granite, have you got any cigarettes with you?"
The maid started a little. "Do you smoke now?" she asked with interest.
"No," said Aunt Mary sadly, "and that's one more of my awful troubles. You see, I'm just achin' to smell smoke, and Joshua promised his mother the night before he was 21. You don't know nothin' about how terrible I feel. I'm empty somewhere just all the time. Don't you believe you could get some cigarettes and smoke 'em right close to me, and let me lay here and be so happy while I smell? I'll have a good doctor for you if you're sick from it."
The maid reflected, then she nodded. "I'll write to town," she cried in her high, clear tones. "What brand do you like best?"
"Mitchell's," said Aunt Mary, "but you can't get those because he made 'em himself and sealed 'em with a lick. Oh," she sighed with the accent of a starving sybarite, "I do wish I could see him do it again. Do you know," she added suddenly, "he wrote me a letter and he's going to come here."
"When?" asked Janice.
"After a while. But you must take off your things. That's your room in there," pointing toward a half-open door at the side. "I wanted you as close as I could get you. My, but I've wanted you. I can't tell you how much. But a good deal, a lot, awfully."
Janice went into the room that was to be hers and hung up her hat and cloak. When she returned, Aunt Mary was looking 100% improved already.
"Can you hum Hiawatha?" she asked immediately. "Granite, I must have suthin' to amuse me and make me feel good. Can you hum Hiawatha, and can you do that kind of sh that everybody does all together at the end, you know?"
Janice smiled pleasantly, and placing herself in the closest possible proximity with the ear trumpet, at once rendered the desired morceau in a style which would have done credit to a soloist in a café chantant. Aunt Mary's lips wreathed in seraphic bliss.
"My," she said, "I feel just as if I was back eatin' crabs' legs and tails again. No one'll ever know how I've missed city life this winter, but, well, you saw Lucinda."
The glance that accompanied the speech was mysterious but significant. Janice nodded sympathetically.
"I hope you brought a trunk. I ain't a bit sure when I'll be able to let you go," pursued the old lady. "I don't believe I can let you go until I go too. I've most died here alone."
"I brought a trunk," Janice cried into the ear trumpet.
"I'm glad,"
said Aunt Mary. She paused and her eyes grew wistful.
"Granite," she asked, "do you think you could manage to do a skirt dance on the footboard? I'm most wild to see some lace shake."
Janice looked doubtfully at the footboard. It was wide for a footboard, but narrow, too narrow, for a skirt dance. "But I can do one on the floor," she cried. Aunt Mary's features became suffused with heavenly joy.
"Oh, Granite,"
she murmured, in accents of greatest anticipation. The maid stood up, and, going off as far as the limits of the spacious bedroom would allow, executed a most fetching and dainty pas seul to a tune of her own humming.
"Gimme somethin' to pound with,"
cried her enthusiastic audience.
"Oh, Granite, I ain't been so happy since I was home. Whatever you want, you can have. Only don't ever leave me alone with Lucinda again."
Janice was catching her tired breath, but she answered with a smile.
"Can't you get my Sunday umbrella out of the closet now and do a parasol dance?" the insatiate demanded. "One of those where you shoot it open and shut when people ain't expectin'."
The maid went to the closet and brought out the Sunday umbrella, but its shiny black silk did not appear to inspire any fluffy maneuvers, so she utilized it in the guise of a broadsword, and did something that savored of the Highlands, and seemed to rebel bitterly at the length of her skirt. Aunt Mary writhed around in bliss, utter and intense.
"I feel like I was livin' again," she said, heaving a great sigh of content. "I tell you I've suffered enough since I came back to know what it is to have some fun again. Now, Granite, I'll tell you what we'll do."
When the girl sat down to rest,
"You write for those cigarettes while I take a little nap, and afterwards we'll get the Universal Knowledge book and learn how to play poker. You don't know how to play poker, do you?"
"A little," cried the maid.
"Well, I want to learn how," said the old lady, "and we'll learn then when I wake up."
Janice nodded assent.
"'Excuse me shutting my eyes,"
said Aunt Mary, and she was asleep in 2 minutes. Chapter 23. Granite continued. Mary and Arethusa, Aunt Mary's 2 nieces, were not uncommonly mercenary, but about 3 weeks after the new arrival, they became seriously troubled over the ascendancy that she appeared to be gaining over the mind of their aunt. Lucinda's duties had included for many years the writing of a weekly letter which contained formal advices of the general state of affairs, and after Janice's establishment, these ladies became so provocative of gradually increasing alarm that first Mary and then Arethusa thought it advisable to make the journey for the purpose of investigating the affair personally. They found the new maid apparently devoid of evil intent, but certainly fast becoming absolutely indispensable to the daily happiness of their influential relative. Mary feared that a codicil for $5,000 would be the result, but Arethusa felt, with a sinking heart, that there was another knot going on to the sum, and that, unless the tide turned, the end might not be even then. Aunt Mary was so cool that neither niece stayed long, and Lucinda's letters had to be looked to for the progress of events. Lucinda's letters were frequent and not at all reassuring. After the sisters had talked them over, they sent them on to Jack. "She," thus Lucinda invariably began, "is the same as ever. It's cross the heart and bend the knee, and then you ain't down far enough to suit her. But she's gettin' so afraid she'll go that she's wax in her hands. It would scare you. She won't let her out of her sight a minute. I must say that whatever she's giving her, she certainly is earning the money, for she works her harder every day. The poor thing is hopping about, or singing, or playing cards, from dawn to dark, and unless it's a provision in her will, I can't see what would pay her enough for working so. Lord knows I considered I earned my wages without skipping around with my legs crossed like she does, and she has no end of patience too, even if she won't ever let her take a walk. She's getting as pale as she is herself. Seems like something should be done. Respectfully, L. Cook." 3 days later, Lucinda wrote again. "She does seem to be getting worse and worse. She makes her sleep on a sofa beside her, and she begins to look dreadfully worn out. I do believe she'll kill her before she dies herself. I told her so today, but she only smiled. It's funny, but I like her even if I'm bolted out all the time. I ain't jealous, and I'm glad of the rest. I should think her throat would split with talking so much, but she certainly does hear her better than anyone else. I think something must be done, though. She's getting as crazy as she is herself. They play cards and call each other auntie for 2 hours at a stretch some days. Respectfully, L. Cook." At the end of the week, Lucinda wrote again. "I think if you don't come, she will surely die. She is very feeble herself, but that don't keep her from wearing her to skin and bone. She keeps her doing tricks from morning to night. Every minute that she is awake she keeps her jumping. It's a mercy she sleeps so much, or she wouldn't get any sleep at all. I can't do nothing, but I can see something has got to be done. She's killing her, and she's getting where she don't care for nobody but her, and if she's to be kept in trim to keep on amusing her, she'll have to have some rest pretty quick. Respectfully, L. Cook." If the sisters were perturbed by the general trend of these epistles, Jack was half wild over the situation. He swore vigorously, and he tramped up and down his room nights, until the people underneath put it in their prayers that his woes might suggest suicide as speedily as possible. In vain he wrote to Mrs. Roscott to restore Janice to her proper place in town. Mrs. Roscott answered that as long as Aunt Mary desired Janice at her side Janice should stay. Jack knew his lady well enough to know that she would keep her word, and although he longed to assert his authority, he was man enough to feel that he had better wait now and settle the debt after marriage. Nevertheless, the whole affair was unbearably vexatious, and at last he felt that he could endure it no longer. "I'm a fool," he said, in a spirit of annoyance that came so close to anger that it led to an utter loss of patience. "I'll take the train for Aunt Mary's to-day and straighten out that mess in short order." It was Saturday, and he arranged to leave by the noon train. He laid in a heavy supply of bribes for his aged relative and of reading matter for himself, and went to the station with a heart divided twixt many different emotions. It was an unconscionably long ride, but he did get there safely about 10 o'clock. It was a pleasant night, not too cold, even suggestive of some lingering Indian summer intentions on the part of Jack's namesake. The young man thought that he would walk out to his childhood's home, and his decision was aided by the discovery that there was no other way to get there. So he took his suitcase in his hand and set off with a stride that covered the intervening miles in short order, and brought him, almost before he knew it, to where he could see Lucinda's light in the dining room and her pug-nosed profile outlined upon the drawn shade. Everyone else was evidently abed, and as he looked, she too arose and took up the lamp. He hurried his steps so that she might let him in before she went upstairs, but in the same instant the light went out, and with its withdrawal he perceived a little figure sitting alone upon the doorstep. His heart gave a tremendous leap, but not with fright, and he made 3 rapid steps and spoke a name. She lifted up her head. Of course it was Janice, and although she had been weeping, her eyes were as beautiful as ever. "Oh, Jack!" she exclaimed, and happy the man who hears his name called in such a tone, even if it be only for once in the whole course of his existence. He pitched his suitcase down upon the grass and took the maid in his arms. What did anything matter? They both were lonely and both needed comforting. He kissed her not once but 20 times, not 20 times but 100. "It's abominable your being here," he said at last. "I'm very, very tired," she confessed. "And you'll go back to the city when I go?" he asked. "I don't know," she said doubtfully. "I don't know whether she'll let me." Jack laughed. "Tomorrow I will beard Aunt Mary in her den," he declared. "Now let's go in and the 101st. End of chapter 23.